Bright QT. Every student matters.
Hello students. So let's start our next topic here, that is functions of political parties. Now students, previously you have learnt about the meaning and nature of political parties, right? Here we are going to understand the functions of political parties. We understood who are these political parties. So a group of people coming together to contest elections, sharing same ideology, and they to form the government, right? Becoming the ruling party. So this is how you are going to define the political parties. Now we also understood about the three components of political parties, that is the leaders, the active members, and the followers. So let us try to understand why these political parties are important and what are the major functions performed by these political parties. So the first and foremost function of any political party is to contest elections. Definitely students, we have learnt about the idea of representative democracy, right? So when we are talking about representative democracy, it means that it is through election process that we are going to choose our representative, right? So when we are talking about political parties, the major function here is to contest elections. So in countries like USA, United States of America, members and supporters of a party choose its candidates, right? So when we are talking about the foreign countries like USA, in these countries what happens? That it is the members and supporters of the party who choose the candidate, right? But when we are talking about our country, India, we see that top party leaders, they choose candidates for contesting elections. Quite important point here, right? So in our country, the supporters and members are not choosing together. Here the people who are being chosen for contesting elections. Here you have to remember this point. We are not talking about the main general election. We are talking about the representatives who are going to run for elections. So these top party leaders, they are going to choose for the people who are going to contest for elections, right? So this is the first function here. Second function is put forward policies and programs. Yes. Now this is what you have learnt earlier as well. So whenever we are talking about any political party, they have certain ideologies, they have certain way in which they function, and that is happening through the policies and programs that they put forward. So government is expected to base its policies on the line taken by the ruling party, right? So basically, how is the government going to work? The government is going to work according to the policies that is adopted or initiated by the ruling party. Correct, students? So these have to be declared through an election manifesto at the time of election. Now these policies and programs that the ruling party, whenever they are coming to power, they are going to initiate. These policies and programs, they have to be represented in the election manifesto at the time of election, right? So these are some of the points on the basis of which they are fighting the elections, and they are trying to prove that their policies and programs are much better than the opposition political parties, right? So putting forward these policies and programs is again one of the functions of political parties. Another function is making laws. Now once these political parties, after contesting elections, they get a winner, and that political party becomes the ruling party, right? The party in power in the government. So once they have become the ruling party, they have the right to make laws. Now, do you remember the concept of parliament that you have already learned, students? Yes, we have talked about parliament as well. The legislative body that we are talking about, the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha at the national level, right? So, the laws are debated and passed in the legislature. Again, you are aware of the term legislature here. Legislature here, it means the law-making body. And at the national level, we have the two houses, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So, the members here, they are responsible for passing the laws, for making the laws, right? So, ruling parties plays a pivotal role in deciding the nature and content of these laws. The laws, what is the nature of this law? What are the important points that have to be kept in the laws, to be mentioned in these laws? So, all these takes place under the ruling party, or the opposition party is also playing a major role. But here, the ruling party, they play a pivotal role. Why? Because they are in majority in the legislative making body, right? Next function is form and run governments. Definitely, students, whenever we are talking about political parties, we are relating it to the elections, right? So, in elections, what is happening? Different political parties, they are sharing their policies, their programs to be initiated when they become the ruling party in order to win any election, right? So, here another foremost function is that of forming and running the government. So, they recruit leaders, they train them and make them ministers to run the government. So, these are some of the important points that you have to keep in mind here. The basic functions of these political parties. Again, another important function is that of the opposition party. By now, students, you have learnt about the ruling party here. Now, ruling party here, it means the party that is in power, right? Now, when we are talking about opposition party, definitely it is something different from the ruling party. Now, who are these members of opposition party here? So, the parties which fail to form government play the role of opposition inside the legislature and outside. So, here are two groups. Let us try to understand that. So, the first group here is that of the ruling party, the party that forms the government, and the other one is opposition party, the party that was not able to form the government. So, therefore, they have an important role to play in our democracy, that is of being in the opposition. Now, what are the functions of these opposition parties? So, they examine and criticize the government for its failure and wrong policies. Definitely, one of the most important functions here is that of the opposition parties. So, to ensure true democracy, we must always challenge the ruling party. Why, students? In order to avoid the autocratic or monarchical rule, right, to come in place. So, here we have to understand that the opposition party, they play a major role in order to ensure true democracy. They have the full right to examine the policies or the welfare schemes that have been introduced by the ruling party, and also criticize the policies and programs introduced by the ruling party or initiated by the ruling party, right? So, here these are some of the important points of the opposition party. Another important function is that of shaping public opinions. Again, one of the important points here, students. Now, how these political parties, they shape public opinions? So, when we talked about opposition party, we saw that they criticize or examine the policies or the programs initiated by the ruling party, right? So when they are criticizing, they are raising some issues. They are highlighting some of the important issues. Now these issues are being discussed by various other political parties, and people are watching those issues on news, television and so on. So by raising and highlighting these issues, the opposition party, they play a major role in formation of public opinion. Right, students? So when you are watching certain thing, definitely you are going to form an opinion regarding it. So people who are watching these news, who are watching the protest against the ruling party, they form certain opinion about the party. Right? That can be in favor of the party, that can be against the ruling party. Right? So here by raising and highlighting issues, opposition party, they play a major role in formation of public opinion. Understood this point here? So it is happening through organizing meetings, demonstrations, protests, right? Also with the help of social media, they are trying to mobilize supporters and trying to raise the issues that can be against the ruling party. Okay? Last point here you can see is about providing people access to government machinery and welfare schemes. So yes, students, now when we are talking about the political parties or the party that wins the election and becomes the ruling party, we see that they have to work for the welfare of the people. They have to be an accountable government. They have to be responsive government. So they have to provide people access to government machinery, right? How the government is working, and also people, they can have direct access to these government aids as well as to the welfare schemes introduced by these political parties. So therefore they can be accountable, they can be responsive to the needs and demands of people. Okay? Now, coming to the exercise section here. Students, you have already learned this part. Now, when we are talking about choosing the candidates for contesting elections, I have told you earlier that it is the top party leadership in our country who chooses the candidates for contesting elections. So, the correct answer here is B. Now, explain how a political party can shape public opinion. How are you going to answer that? Just right now, you have learned this point here. So, you have to talk about the role of opposition party in this, right? Shaping public opinion is definitely in the hands of the opposition parties who are doing what, students? They are raising and highlighting the issues related to the policies of the ruling party. So they play a major role in shaping public opinion through demonstrations, meetings, and protests. Now this is how they are making people socially aware about these issues, taking the help of media as well. So this is how you are going to answer this question. Now state the various functions which political parties perform in a democracy. How are you going to answer this question? You have to talk about the various functions that we have learned right now. So the first function here you can talk about is the shaping of public opinion. Then you can write about making laws. Third point can be the role of opposition parties or role of opposition. Fourth point can be forming policies and programs. And right now we have discussed all these points. So you should not face any difficulty in answering this question. Contesting elections, to run the government, providing access to provide people access to government machinery as well as the welfare schemes. That is the last point that you have learned, students, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. So here you can write all these 7 functions and you can brief them, right? You can explain them, how these functions are performed by the political parties. So here please focus on all these 7 functions performed by these political parties. Now, what are the characteristics of political party? Definitely here you have to talk about the political parties in general. Since you have now learnt about the meaning and nature of political party as well as features of political party, you can answer this question by talking about the meaning of political parties, right? What are these political parties? Then you can talk about the components of political parties, right? And then in brief, you can talk about, when we are understanding the characteristics of political party, you can talk about their features in short, right? So what are some of the features or functions that these political parties perform and that defines the political party here, right? So these are some of the points that you have to mention here. Again, students, you have a question about the ruling and opposition party. So there is a question on differentiate between ruling party and opposition party. So this is what you have learned right now. So when we are talking about the ruling party, it means the party that has formed the government, right? And when we talk about the opposition party, what are you going to write here? In opposition party, you have to talk about the party that fails to form the government is known as the opposition party, right? So basically the party that is in majority and fails to form the government, right? So this party is known as the opposition party that criticizes and examines the policies or the schemes introduced by the ruling party, right? And helps in shaping public opinion as well. So this is how you can answer this question here.